Hello and welcome to GameGen! So, if you're like me and love losing hours managing empires, forging alliances, or trying to keep your nation from completely falling apart, then you're probably always on the lookout for the next big grand strategy game. There are quite a few interesting ones coming up, some with massive galactic scales, others focused on deep political systems or historical realism. I've gathered some of the most promising upcoming grand strategy games that I personally think are worth keeping an eye on, whether you're into space conquests or classic map painting. Alright, let's dive in and take a look at what's coming next. Master of Command. Master of Command takes a very different approach to grand strategy. Instead of ruling an empire or managing endless provinces, this one throws you into the muddy boots of an 18th century commander trying to keep a single army alive through one of history's toughest wars, the 7 Years' War. It's being developed by Armchair History Interactive, and it looks like a strategy game that actually respects the grind, exhaustion, and chaos of real warfare. The whole game revolves around your army's journey. You'll move across a real-time campaign map, exploring, managing supplies, and deciding when to march, rest, or fight. The map itself is procedurally generated, so every campaign feels fresh and unpredictable. Push your troops too far, and they'll starve or collapse from exhaustion. This isn't a game that lets you spam units and charge into battle. It forces you to think like an actual commander. What's really cool is just how personal it feels. Your army is persistent, meaning every victory and loss sticks with you. Units and officers gain experience, and you can customize everything from their weapons and equipment to their uniforms and regimental flags. Lose your base regiment, and it's gone for good. Europa Universalis V. Europa Universalis V is shaping up to be Paradox's biggest and most ambitious grand strategy game yet, a true successor to one of the most iconic strategy titles ever made. If you've ever lost entire weekends to managing trade routes, juggling alliances, and somehow ending up in a 100-year war because of a royal marriage gone wrong, then yeah, this one is for you. Set between 1337 and the late 18th century, EU5 gives you control of any nation in the world and lets you shape its destiny across nearly 500 years of history. You can aim to build an empire that spans continents, dominate through trade, spread your religion, or just try to survive surrounded by hungry neighbors. The freedom is what makes it so addictive. There's no single way to win, just endless stories that unfold from your decisions. This time around though, Paradox is going all in on depth. The world feels more alive thanks to a detailed population, or POP system, similar to Victoria 3, where every province has district social groups defined by religion, culture, and class. That means internal politics and unrest will play a much bigger role. You'll also balance power among estates, the nobility, clergy, and burghers, each with their own agendas. Extinction Day. Extinction Day is one of those games where you're not saving the world. You're actually the reason that it ends. You play as this all-powerful force whose one and only goal is to wipe out humanity before they can escape Earth on something called the Ark. You've got a pretty wild arsenal to make it happen too. Things like natural disasters, deadly plagues, global wars, and yes, even zombie outbreaks. But it's not just mindless destruction, you actually have to be strategic. Every disaster costs resources, and the more chaos you cause, the more you earn to unlock new abilities or upgrade your apocalyptic tools. Of course though, humanity doesn't just sit there waiting to die. They'll fight back, try to rebuild, and do everything they can to survive. So you'll have to adapt and make sure that your attacks hit where it hurts the most. The whole thing is simulated on a massive scale, with thousands of humans reacting dynamically across a 3D Earth map, making the destruction feel both huge and oddly realistic. Oh, and if you don't like following missions, there's a sandbox mode as well where you can unleash every kind of disaster just for fun. I'll be covering more games just like this one, so if that's your kind of thing, come hang out and subscribe. Project Rebearth. Project Rebearth takes the idea of rebuilding civilization and turns it into a massive shared online world. It's a city-building MMO set on a 1x1 scale version of Earth. Yes, the entire planet, where every player can claim their own spot and start building society after a global collapse wiped everything out. You begin as one of the survivors emerging back to the surface after centuries underground. The world is habitable again, but empty, quiet, and full of remnants of the old world waiting to be rediscovered. From there, it's all about rebuilding, setting up your first settlement, gathering materials, expanding your town, and slowly unlocking old technologies to bring life back to the planet. What makes Project Rebearth special though is its relaxed, long-term approach. Your farms keep on growing and your industries keep running even when you're offline. There's no rush, just steady progress as your town evolves and you trade resources with other players scattered across the globe. And because everyone plays on the same real-world map, you can actually travel to see just how much other players are shaping their piece of the Earth. Whether that's a thriving community in Europe or a lonely outpost in the middle of the Pacific. Tapestry. So, Tapestry is basically a civilization building game, but not the kind that tries to recreate real history. Instead, it's more like, what if we just built our own weird little civilization from scratch and watched it grow into the future? You start as this small tribe, and over the course of 5 years, you shape your civilization however you want, through science, exploration, technology, or military power. What I really like is just how flexible it feels. Every player gets a completely different civilization, each with its own unique perks and abilities. That means no two games ever play out the same way. And maybe in one run you're this highly advanced scientific utopia, and in the next you're a bunch of explorers expanding across the map, grabbing territories and building landmarks. The board itself is super satisfying too. You've got your own little city map that feels like a Tetris puzzle. You're trying to fit buildings and landmarks perfectly to score extra points and resources. And then there are Tapestry cards, which act like big era-changing moments that can totally shake things up with new powers or game-changing effects. Tapestry has that mix of planning, surprise, and just enough randomness to keep things interesting. It's not about being historically accurate, it's about telling your own story of progress, and that's honestly what makes it so much fun to play. Falling Frontier. Falling Frontier is a space RTS that's all about careful planning, logistics, and good intel. Because out here, one bad supply line or misscan can get your entire fleet wiped out. Developed by Stutterfox Studios and published by Hooded Horse, this game puts you in charge of an expedition that just established its first spaceport in a new star system, only to realize that you're not alone. Rival factions from humanity's old wars like Earth, Titan, and Venus are also here, and everyone is fighting for control of this vast, procedurally generated system filled with planets, moons, and asteroid belts. What makes this game stand out is just how much it focuses on realism. You'll have to manage logistics, setting up supply routes, refineries, and defense flotillas, because if your ship runs out of fuel or ammo mid-war, you're done. Intel is just as important as well. You can deploy probes, build recon stations, or even hide ships behind moons or inside gas giants to avoid detection. Then there's the ship design. Over 20 types of vessels that you can fully customize, from frigates to battle cruisers, each with different weapons and utility modules. Battles feel cinematic and tactical, with ships taking subsystem damage, shots ricocheting into other targets, and even small ambush fleets outsmarting massive cruisers. Add in the crew management, base building, and a grounded atmosphere that feels straight out of The Expanse, and Falling Frontier ends up being one of the most methodical and rewarding space strategy games out there. The Last General. The Last General looks like one of the most ambitious solo-developed RTS projects out there. It's a modern warfare strategy game that ditches micromanagement and zooms out to the big picture. You're not babysitting individual soldiers here. You're acting like a true commander, sketching out grand strategies across massive, living battlefields. The scale alone is wild. Maps can span up to 400 square kilometers, filled with cities, towns, and supply lines to capture and defend. You'll command thousands of units, tanks, infantry, artillery, and logistics convoys. But the real beauty is how you control them. Instead of constantly clicking and dragging, you draw plans directly on the map. Want your forces to advance along a river valley or establish a defense perimeter around a key industrial zone? Just draw it out, and your AI-controlled sub-commanders carry out the orders intelligently. That design keeps your focus on strategy, not micromanagement. You're balancing war economics, securing fuel and materials, and making tough political choices that can sway the outcome of the entire campaign. You can go for surgical strikes, infrastructure sabotage, or even false flag operations to manipulate the balance of power. And with millions of potential mission scenarios, from assassinations and insurgencies to all-out wars, every playthrough feels dynamic and unpredictable. Gilded Destiny. Gilded Destiny looks like the next big leap for fans of deep historical grand strategy, the kind of game that lets you guide an entire nation through the chaos and opportunity of the Industrial Age. Set between the 19th and early 20th centuries, it's all about transforming your country from a quiet agrarian society into a roaring industrial empire, shaping everything from the economy to the culture and the people who live within it. The level of simulation here sounds pretty intense in the best way possible. The economy runs on a global supply and demand system, with factories, resources, and trade routes all interlinked. You're not just placing buildings, you're constructing entire industrial ecosystems, managing railways, ports, and logistics networks to keep your empire running efficiently. But industry is only half the story. Society itself is changing, and fast. You'll manage population groups defined by class, culture, and religion, each with their own needs and political leanings. Political parties rise, merge, and clash as you try to balance reform and repression. Do you push for progress and risk revolution, or maintain stability at the cost of innovation? Everything unfolds on a fully simulated 3D globe with over 1 million hexes. Terrain, geography, and climate all matter, influencing trade, development, and warfare. You can take direct control of your armies, secure railway lines, and adapt to evolving military technology as warfare transforms alongside industry. Fragile Existence. Fragile Existence is one of those strategy games that hits you right in the gut with its premise. Earth has been wiped out, and you're leading the last human fleet drifting through the stars, trying to survive against all odds. It's part real-time strategy, part survival management, and honestly, it looks like Homeworld had a baby with Frostpunk, but in space. You'll be exploring fully 3D solar systems, managing your fleet, and hopping from planet to planet just to stay alive. Every resource matters. Fuel, food, ammo, everything is physicalized and has to be stored, transported, and used carefully. You can even send expeditions down to planets, set up temporary bases, and scavenge for materials while your ships orbit above, keeping an eye out for threats. What makes it really interesting though is how seamlessly everything connects. Your fleet in orbit can support ground operations, drop ships can move units back and forth, and if things go wrong, well, there's no backup coming. Beyond survival, you'll also deal with crew morale, faction loyalty, and research to keep humanity advancing. It's got that slow, tense vibe where every decision feels important, and every mistake could doom what's left of our species. If you love strategy games that mix exploration, storytelling, and that constant feeling of we're barely holding it together, Fragile Existence might be one to keep an eye on. Espiocracy. If you've ever played a grand strategy game and thought, what if I didn't control the army, but the spies? Espiocracy is exactly that fantasy brought to life. Instead of leading nations into open war, you're the mastermind behind the scenes, running the intelligence agency of one of 74 countries. The game starts right after World War II in 1946 and can stretch all the way up to 2023, basically letting you shape nearly a century of global intrigue from the shadows. Your mission isn't to conquer territory, it's to control the flow of information, to manipulate, deceive, and pull strings until the world bends your way. You'll recruit agents with their own quirks and loyalties, send them on covert missions, spread propaganda, sabotage governments, or even orchestrate coups when things get messy. Everything happens behind closed doors. Fake news, double agents, political blackmail. It's the kind of world where nobody's ever telling the full truth. You also have to protect your own agency from enemy spies. One bad leak or betrayal, and years of planning could fall apart. What's cool is that this all unfolds on a grand strategy scale. The game simulates global politics, historical events like the Cold War and decolonization, and evolving ideologies. But you're influencing it all indirectly, through subterfuge and manipulation. Espiocracy feels like a strategy game for those who'd rather play chess in the shadows. Slow, cerebral, and full of what-if moments that could rewrite history itself. Dynasty Protocol. Dynasty Protocol is what happens when you mix a classic real-time strategy game with the grand, lonely beauty of deep space. It's all about building your interstellar dynasty, expanding your empire, managing vital resources, and commanding massive fleets in sprawling space battles. You're not just a commander here, you're the architect of an entire galactic legacy. At its core, the game revolves around smart management. You'll set up mining operations on asteroids to gather oxygen, hydrogen, and other critical materials. Then keep your logistics chain running with cargo ships ferrying supplies between colonies. Every decision matters, from how you tax people to how much oxygen your fleet has left for the next jump across the stars. The galactic market adds yet another layer of strategy, where trading resources and acquiring dark matter becomes key to staying competitive in the race for galactic dominance. Your colonies aren't just outposts, they're living, breathing hubs of civilization that can thrive or rebel depending on your leadership. Some might specialize in producing weapons or building research stations, while others can even develop devastating superweapons. Then there's the fleet combat, cinematic, tactical, and deeply customizable. Ships gain experience over time, can be outfitted with up to 15 weapon upgrades, and require constant resupply to stay in fighting shape. Beyond Astra. Beyond Astra takes the classic 4x formula, explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, and reimagines it in a full real-time living galaxy. It's not just another space empire simulator, it's an ambitious mix of deep management, RTS-style battles, and city building, all happening seamlessly across planets and stars. You start out small, founding a single settlement on an unknown world, and from there, your mission is to guide your civilization into the stars, expanding to new planets, researching powerful technologies, and managing the complex web of politics, culture, and logistics that come with running a galactic empire. What really sets Beyond Astra apart is just how smooth everything feels. You can zoom straight from the galaxy map down to the surface of a planet, watching your cities and armies in real time with no loading screens in between. Each of the 4x pillars feels deep and meaningful. You'll explore the unknown, uncover alien species and lost secrets, and expand your reach by building and managing specialized cities that shape your empire's identity. You can dive into trade, religion, or culture just as much as you can into warfare, which itself is massive in scale. Battles unfold both in space and on planetary surfaces, letting you command fleets, deploy ground troops, and wage war across multiple fronts at once. Capital Command. Capital Command instantly gives that feeling of being in charge of something massive. Not a tiny fighter jet, but a full-blown capital ship with hundreds of people depending on your decisions. It's a space sim that puts you right on the bridge, managing weapons, shields, engines, and crew, all while trying not to get blown to pieces in the middle of deep space. What I really like about Capital Command is how it slows things down. It's not about fast reflexes or dogfighting, it's about strategy, weight, and control. You're giving orders to your crew, balancing power systems, and trying to position your massive ship just right to fire a broadside or block incoming missiles. Every moment feels deliberate, and that's what makes it tense. The settings are also pretty cool. You're way out on a lonely frontier, fighting rogue AI forces that have completely lost it. There's this eerie, isolated vibe, like you're the last line of defense against something that you don't fully understand. And when things go wrong, when alarms start blaring, the hull's taking hits, and your crew is scrambling to repair systems, it feels chaotic in the best way. It's cinematic, but it also makes you think carefully before doing anything. NULLSPACE. NULLSPACE is one of those games that immediately caught my eye because it mixes two things that I love: big strategic fleet battles and the thrill of actually piloting a ship yourself. It's a real-time strategy game, but it's also got this cool twist where you can zoom right down into the action and take direct control of one of your squadrons, flying and fighting in the middle of the chaos. It's like being both the admiral and the pilot at the same time. What really stands out to me is the tone of the world. It's got this gritty, retro-futuristic space western vibe with rugged ships that look more like machines built for war than flashy sci-fi toys. You can tell every cannon and every piece of armor has a purpose, and the battles, they look intense. You'll be commanding fleets across multiple star systems, and when things heat up, you can jump right into the cockpit to blast enemies yourself. The game's also pretty story-driven, which I personally really like. It's not just random missions, there's lore, characters, and this big mystery about humanity's place in the universe. Plus, it dives into the Fermi paradox in its own unique way, which gives everything a sense of depth and tension. Atre, Dominance Wars. Atre Dominance Wars is basically what would happen if a 4x strategy game, an RTS, and a god game all got smashed together. But somehow it works. You play as this ancient sorcerer called an Elder, who's basically on a journey to become a literal god. The world you're in, called Atre, is constantly being torn apart and merged back together by some kind of magical chaos, so your goal is to anchor your land before everything collapses. No pressure, right? What I really like here is just how layered the gameplay is. On one level, you're managing your empire, expanding territories, researching new spells, forging alliances, and dealing with betrayals. Diplomacy isn't just about clicking ally or war, it's more like detective work. You uncover plots, expose rivals, and manipulate everyone from the shadows, which honestly sounds way more fun than just building farms and hoping for peace. Then, when battles actually happen, it shifts into real-time strategy mode. You control armies led by these powerful avatars while also using your Elder magic to literally reshape the battlefield. Like, if things aren't going your way, you can just raise a mountain or flood the enemy's camp. It's pretty insane. Ascendance. Ascendance looks like the kind of game that'll keep you up at 3 AM thinking, just one more system. It's a mix of grand strategy, 4x, and real-time space battles. Basically everything I love about managing empires, but in a living, breathing galaxy. You're not just clicking on planets to build stuff, you're actually guiding an entire civilization, dealing with politics, corporations, fleets, and all the chaos that comes with running an interstellar government. What really grabs me here is just how deep the simulation goes. Every ship, every company, every politician has a purpose and reacts to what's happening in the galaxy. The economy isn't just numbers on a screen, goods actually move around on freighters, and your supply chains can get disrupted if something goes wrong. Even internal politics matter. You'll have parties fighting for influence, elections taking place, and factions trying to push their own agendas while you're busy expanding your reach amongst the stars. And when it comes to combat, it's not just a cinematic show. Battles happen in real time, with physics-based projectiles and positioning that actually matters. It's the kind of tactical depth that reminds me why I love strategy games in the first place. Systematic War. Systematic War is one of those games that feels like it's trying to do everything, but somehow it might just pull it off. It's a modern grand strategy game with real-time battles, meaning you're not only handling global diplomacy and economic policy, but also jumping right into the chaos when things inevitably go wrong. Think Hearts of Iron meets Wargame, Red Dragon, but in the same world we actually live in. The game covers modern geopolitics from 2008 all the way up to 2025, and every decision feels pretty heavy. You can take control of any country, whether that's the US, China, Russia, or smaller nations trying to survive between giants. The world map isn't divided into the usual abstract provinces either. It's based on real road and rail network that directly affect logistics, supply lines, and just how fast your troops can move. On the economic side, it dives surprisingly deep. You'll be managing GDP, interest rates, exchange rates, and trade using a real-world macroeconomic model. You can turn your country into an industrial powerhouse, a resource exporter, or a high-tech innovator depending on your policies. Meanwhile, diplomacy isn't just about treaties and threats. You'll engage in information warfare, media manipulation, and hybrid tactics to weaken your rivals before the first shot is fired. And when war finally does break out, you zoom right down into the battlefield for the full RTS-style combat, commanding modern units like tanks, drones, and artillery across real-world inspired maps, from Aleppo to Taiwan. DSS2 War Industry. DSS2 War Industry instantly caught my attention because it's not your typical strategy game. It's this huge, real-time mix of grand strategy and city building where you're basically running an entire empire's war industry. You're not just sending armies into battle, you're managing everything behind the scenes, from the factories producing weapons to the logistics keeping your troops supplied. The game actually simulates hundreds of thousands of soldiers and workers all moving and working in real time, which gives it this insane sense of scale that you don't really see very often. What I find pretty interesting though is how it blends calm, methodical city building with large-scale warfare. You have to think about your economy, automate your production chains, and make sure that your supply lines don't collapse mid-war. And when it's time to fight, you're commanding these massive armies that you've built up from scratch. Plus the fact that you can customize your soldiers with different gear and specializations, adding a really personal touch to your military strategy. It honestly looks like one of those games where you can just get lost for hours, fine-tuning your empire until everything clicks perfectly. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to leave a comment below if any of these games caught your eye, or if there are other upcoming releases you'd like to hear about. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more gaming content in the future. Thanks for watching.